Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin. So Tony, what's on the show today?
Well, Steve, Aarash will talk to us about the health and medical sector. Our panel will discuss, would you buy a house that's been flipped? But first, Mary on interior design.
Mary, great to finally have you on the New Property Show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
Thanks for jumping on board. So interior design, I'm going to touch on a few things today. Joinery, what you do, who you're dealing with, and there's a few surprises coming to the industry. First of all, tell us about your business.
Well, Avanthi Living was born out of sheer frustration.
Okay.
My cousin, literally, I used to have a franchise and I used to have to only offer people a specific type of joinery and a modular system. And a lot of the people that I'd meet, they'd love the solution that I would give them, but they weren't happy with a particular colour or texture, etc. So Avanthi Living was born literally, like I said, out of frustration. It means A to Z in the Coptic language, and it's an ancient language, which I'm very proud of. Look, it's A to Z of joinery solution, design solutions. As designers, we supply service and we're problem solvers. And so we essentially exist because a customer has a problem. And with the kitchen and bathroom thing, look, I'm obsessed, a little bit obsessed. I actually am an industrial designer. So using that skill set in interior design and interior architecture, I found a bit of a point of difference because I love material fabrication and understanding how materials are made and why we should be using them in our home, why certain materials are not suitable for home, etc. So with the design of kitchens, I was just mentioning before, there's different types of joinery. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers and people are not aware of this. So when they're getting a kitchen quote, for example, I'm renovating a kitchen, they immediately knee-jerk reaction is to get a flat pack quote, a modular system quote, and maybe a custom joint or a cabinet maker's quote. They're very different. Why? Because the flat pack is a system. It's a very limited system. But again, it comes in a box. You have to put it together. The install cost the same throughout. So you're really not saving money. Then the modular system, again, it's a larger system, except they're ready-made cabinets.
Ready-made.
Okay, so not all of them are made the same. Some companies manufacture better than others. Some don't take shortcuts, unfortunately. The landscape at the moment is becoming smaller and smaller because a lot of the larger, very reputable companies have closed because of a lot of builders have gone bust. So it's like a domino effect. So consumers have to be very, very cautious as to who is manufacturing their products. But also then, as I said, the modular is just another system, another step in this puzzle. Then you've got custom. Now custom is a couple of different options. You've got cabinet makers, and then you've got custom modular, which is like the luxury Italian brands and German brands. So it can be very confusing. So that's why Avanthi was born, because it kind of simplifies this whole messy landscape. We start off with a consultation, and that's the most important part of this puzzle, because if we don't ascertain exactly what the problem is, we can't solve it. I can't recommend whether, we can actually use a flat pack in here. It will work in here. It will work with your budget. And so we have that conversation. Also the consultation, obviously that part of measuring, we can flag things like, for example, there's something wrong with the floor, the waste pipe is in the wrong spot for the design, etc. So that's the most important part of this whole process. Then we have the design. The design, that's the fun part. We get to sit down and design with 3D visualization and 3D tours, and that's the part I love the most, to be honest.
I think that's the most exciting.
It is very exciting. We use VR and, it's all very impressive. But again, if we don't get the first part done right, the design is just useless. I mean, we can draw some pretty pictures and wow, hopefully someone can give me a sticker for that. But if it doesn't sell, then I'm back to square one. And of course, then the supplies after that. So that we have a vast range of suppliers and our network, whether it's a custom or modular or flat pack, depending on what that customer's needs are, their budget as well, and also what kind of dwelling it is. Is it the forever home? Is it just they're renovating for profit? Is it a house flip? It depends. So we really consult with them quite in depth to understand how we can help them. And so that's how, I guess, Avanthi was born.
There's a few other elements there too. So I guess you'd walk into a kitchen space and you'd I guess your mind's almost like a Terminator, really.
Yep.
You're going, okay, so 3x3, there's 3 typical conversions here in terms of kitchen. The sink against the wall, the cooker against the wall, maybe cooker in the centre. Then you've got to look at appliances as well, tapware. There's a couple of elements because they may have an item that they want to put in there.
Yes.
Then we need to start looking at what style of cooking they're also using. So type of joinery and that sort of stuff, and then also a lot of new features out there with drawer systems at the moment. I think everything needs to have its place, and then you've got to look at I guess pantries, and then also storage, and then there's 3 different options there. So I think being able to do that. But can you pretty well walk into a room and kind of go, as an estimate in the back of your mind, this is a 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand job, and you sort of, can you visualise that?
I can, but that's based on just some questioning and understanding. So really have to build a brief and understand what the customer's expectations are. A lot of people want to renovate, for example, their kitchen, and they don't even think about the floor, and that is a huge surface area and a big ticket item. So they're not putting that in the mix. They're not understanding, well, I have to take time off. That's going to cost money as well. So do I have to hire a project manager? There's a lot of elements, but like I said, the consultation or the site check or the measure, that's the part where that's the most important meeting that you'll ever have with a designer or any company.
Is that always in, for example, your consultations? Are you going to their homes?
Yes.
Yep. And that's personally you doing that, or you're sending someone else out?
I have a few people that I can send as well, but I personally love to do it initially because, again, it's my business, it's my baby, and I want to make sure that it starts. Sometimes. I go home with a bag of lemons all the time. Some olives and some nice things.
Second prize.
Yeah, definitely. But look, it's one of those things where people always come in and say, oh, I want a kitchen triangle, and they've Googled something and they've, diagnosed on Instagram, and it's rubbish. Like, I have to say.
Has AI come in and done that? Because I saw the other day, I was actually looking to do a design for a small study area. And you can take a picture and you can give it its parameters and it can visualise that quickly. People coming with those style of pictures
AI,
now?
I tried AI and I had a bit of a play with it, and it gave me a sink on the ceiling. Like, it's still learning and it's still not knowing enough. And I think that's why it's so important to hire a designer, because we live this every day. We can understand, you're telling us, all of the wish list, and we can kind of nut it, like cull it down to what you really need. The other thing I was going to say is, the kitchen triangle I just mentioned before, it's dead. I apologise, and if you hear it here first, it's not new.
It's first news.
It's breaking news. But to be honest, we think, okay, our homes now, we have these massive kitchens, we have a butler's pantry, we can't live without a coffee machine or a microwave or a dishwasher. These things are not on a point on the triangle. So the triangle's over 100 years old now, and we don't live that way anymore. So we have to evolve. Like you said about the technology, we had, there was an exhibition just recently in Milan where they showcased all of the new technology. There's cooktops underneath stone bench tops now, and, cabinets that spin in different ways. So it's the ergonomics, you accessing things is different now. And I guess they're keeping in mind how people's different abilities are important now. It's not everyone is just able to reach for things.
To a point nowadays, I don't use them myself, but air fry is the next Thermomix. You
can get them in ovens now, so you don't need a standalone.
Correct. You need more space for those because that's taking up space. Look, as much as everybody loves to have those items, I would never buy one because it's going to sit on my bench. It's too big.
Yeah, but you can have it in the oven now. So some ovens now have air fry options. So I always tell people the first thing you think about whenever you're renovating is forget about the colours and just stop Googling your heart out. Think about, I'm selfish now, I have to think about exactly how I'm cooking and what I want to cook and how I want to store things and how I want to interact with the space. And the 2 biggest things that you need to think about are your appliances and your bench top, because those things cop a beating.
Well, let's talk about bench tops. Stone. There's a bit of a ban coming.
Yes, it is. We're the first country in the world to implement a stone ban because of the silica content. And what I'm saying is the reconstituted stone, they're not all the same. So ones with quartz and resin. Basically, when these are fabricated, the dust particles, when they're inhaled, they can cause something called silicosis. So it basically kills your lungs, it cuts at your lungs. It's a nasty, nasty disease. A lot of people, unfortunately, have suffered this at the hands of this material, but I guess it's one of those things. As consumers, we are obsessed with renovating, and we want these really strong materials.
When does this ban come out?
July 1st.
Oh, that's just
Yeah,
around the corner.
just around the
So,
corner. Just around the
What does
corner.
that mean for factories that are holding this stuff? Does that go to black market? How do you get rid of this
Look,
stone?
I don't know. No comment.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But look, I know that they're
Yeah.
probably trying to sell it off as quickly as
I'd
possible.
say they would be. Yeah.
Or even give it away.
Yeah.
There was no mention as to how it's going to be disposed of, really.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But consumers, their options really are, not really, they were always there.
Yeah.
Natural stone and porcelain or sintered stones. I would recommend if you're going to do a natural stone, then you would go a quartzite or a dolomite. That basically means it's strong enough and it's not going to be as porous as other natural stones in a kitchen, because a lot of the time people cover it with another polymer, so it defeats the purpose. However, I'm a big fan of porcelain. I've been using it for the last 10 years. I've been banging on about this forever. And that's probably because of my background in product design.
Yep.
Porcelain is not porous. It's got a very, very high heat point, so it's not going to be affected by a hot pot. It won't suffer thermal shock, etc., etc., etc. So it's got a lot of benefits, and the prices will come down because a lot of people will be available everywhere now.
Love it. Been an amazing guest.
Thank
you
you.
for so much for coming on. And
Pleasure.
we'd love to have you again back on the show, and obviously I think we continue this conversation around the stone. And maybe next time we can demonstrate some of the ideal kitchen layouts, what that might look like, and of course we might touch on the bathrooms as well.
Pleasure. No worries.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Mary.
you. Thank you.
Aarash, welcome to the New Property Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Mate, you are a broker, but you have a specialist field. Do you want to talk to us about what you do?
Yeah, so I run a brokerage called First Aid Finance. We're predominantly focusing on the health sector and the medical sector. So that means we get a range of different professions such as GPs, psychologists, psychiatrists, surgeons. Predominantly most of these clientele, I mean, they're very switched on when it comes into their health field, when it comes in relation to borrowing money or doing deals, or just managing their money as a whole, or seeing where they should be investing, where they shouldn't be. That's when we come in and we sort of tell our advice and structure their debt accordingly.
Well, I think most importantly too, as I said, look, their mind's probably that busy. They're book solid. They're doing a lot of stuff, and really their mind's not there. That's why they hire an expert. But I'd find that would be quite challenging as well, okay? Because you've got high income earners that are obviously book smart. They're probably some of them the top of the tree, so there's a lot of ego in industry and confidence there. Are they demanding of your time? And what sort of time are you speaking to these guys? Because if they're charging out anywhere between $100 to $1,000 an hour, that time's best used for them to be working. Are you speaking to them 7, 8 o'clock at night, or?
Steve, it really depends on the client. I mean, we're very, very proud to say that we very tailored to the customer, to the client, whether it's a doctor, psychiatrist, whoever it is, or a surgeon that's very, very busy. I mean, we've had instances where we've actually had to fly out with the clients in person. We provide that sort of VIP experience where when you come in, whether you're calling me up at 2 a.m. or you're calling me up at 12 p.m, we're on the ball. We're always ready. We're good to go whenever. So yes, we do work a lot after hours and on weekends, just because, a doctor's schedule is very, very busy. What
are some of the advantages too? So obviously you've got a specific field. What I'm aware of is that generally they can borrow up to 90%, no lender's mortgage insurance. Do you want to just go through some of the advantages of being into that field and just the stuff that we don't know about and what banks you're using for this?
Of course. Thanks, Steve. But we can actually go up to 100% lending now.
Fantastic.
For GPs and doctors. Obviously, they have very strict eligibility criteria. 100% lending, that's still with the LMI waivers and normal rates. That one, there's only probably one bank that comes to mind when it comes to 100% lending or very high LVRs, and that is Bank of Queensland Specialists. Bank of Queensland Specialists is sort of a specialist division for young professionals that are getting into industry or looking to build up their portfolio. And they pretty much, I mean, we've had doctors that come in and they've been working a month and a half new to industry, and we'll still be able to secure their home loans, car loans, business loans.
And does that, sorry, but this is more of a question for me. Does that extend to construction, or is this established homes only?
It can be construction as well,
Yeah.
as long as it is their first property.
Yeah.
Bank of Queensland very, very good in that space. They love that's sort of their bread and butter. And then we have more of the mainstream lenders such as ANZ, Westpac, NAB. I mean, they are very, very policy specific. That means if you have something a bit more difficult, or you've had a doctor that's recently passed exams and increased in income, they will generally, stay away from that, unless it does make sense. It's a bit more difficult. Based on what financials the client has and what position they're in, we will select, the most suitable bank.
Very niche market you're working in. So, how do you attract these clients? Where do they come from?
I mean, honestly, most of them are from word of mouth.
Yeah.
We do have a bit of social media presence and advertising and just general knowledge as well out there, but mostly word of mouth. And it's very, very crucial that we provide that sort of experience where they benefit from it, and then they either come back or they refer us. As you know, if you're in the profession, you generally have friends and family within that profession as well. Generally either they come through word of mouth or, referrals.
Hopefully one day they can return the favour. If something goes wrong with you, you know who to call.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And what about dealing with, for example, those psychiatrists and those sort of like that as well, because they're so analytical?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're getting your own diagnosis when you're dealing with those guys, or are they just the same as us?
I mean, they're very similar to us, but there is a certain, technique and way of speaking to them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very, analytical, switched on. So if you are going to come, you need to come with evidence.
Yeah.
And you need to explain, your reasoning behind doing a specific thing.
Yeah.
For example, I mean, we had a doctor come in and pretty much wanted to borrow the maximum amount they could borrow, which was about $2.5 million at the time. But they did have some tax that was going to fall due within the next 12 months. Now, we explained to the doctor, I mean, if we can borrow $2.5 million, but that probably doesn't make sense in this point in time. You've got tax due, you want to spend more time with family, you're going to be putting yourself under immense pressure to pretty much fulfill this home loan compared to you buying something a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And then being able to, spend time with family and not use up all your savings.
It's very holistic.
Yeah, a very holistic approach. So, I mean, your general brokerage, most people can write a home loan. It's a few forms, but it's sort of going beyond that. Okay, what's going to happen in the next 12 months, next 2 years? What are your future plans? What's your rate of savings? So it all goes in together when we provide that sort of mortgage and debt advice.
I think one thing I'd love to hear about that is, what about budgeting and that sort of stuff as well? So everybody can, as you said, fill out the loan, but you've touched on something there, is putting a certain amount away. Have you got a formula that you liked that people to see? So they should have 30% on living costs, 20% on savings. What's that magic formula that people really should be trying to put away per week or per month?
I mean, without looking at a holistic view of it, it differs client to client, whether you have kids, whether you don't have kids, whether you're planning for kids, depending on your pre-tax income, post-tax income, whether you're self-employed or whether you're PAYG, it really, really differs. But a general rule of thumb, if you're able to save 30 to 40% of your income, that's sort of where you would want to stay. But once again, it differs client to client.
Well, it does build up wealth long term. As I said, it's not about where you are now, it's where you're going. And I'm liking that attitude too, because when we spoke off camera, you've obviously got everything covered. You don't just provide the service. It seems that you're looking after your clients' long-term needs, which may even go against you doing a deal or getting commission there. But it's for the greater good, because it comes back out, and hence why you've been invited on the show, because your brand is so strong. But what I'd like to hear about from you is you've only been in this industry for a few years, okay? So that's you've still got years to go.
Yeah.
What does your business look like in 2025, 2026? Do you going to have an offshore team, or what is that going to look like for you?
I mean, in terms of offshore team, I would
Yep.
not move towards that.
Yep.
I do have a few new brokers that I have
Yep.
that have come on board,
Mm-hmm.
but for me in 2025, it's looking to expand and hiring the right people. I mean, the same work ethic that I have and the same advice that I provide, they need to be very, very much in line. I'd like to say that we go over quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we like to, take care of that client. They need to feel like they're in some sort of exclusive firm that takes care of them and takes care of all their needs. And we need to be able to consistently provide that experience moving forward. So as we expand and we have more people join the team, we predominantly want to keep that same level of quality. But in 2025 to 2026, we are looking to open up offices more interstate, and that way, we're able to expand and grow. Because I mean, the medical field, we've got a good grasp on, the medical field in Victoria, but I mean, everywhere else is untapped.
I could see you duplicating that process, hence the question there. Even if you operated in Sydney, Queensland, maybe even going over to WA or South Australia, but an office per capital, which is it, because I interview a lot of people on this show, but not any that are that specific on one niche. And there's a lot of doctors around and psychiatrists. I want to congratulate you on your success. You've been an amazing guest, and we look forward to having you back on the New Property Show.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Hey guys, and welcome to this week's debate. House flipping. Would you buy a property that somebody's, renovated to flip? I guess where do we start with it? I personally, probably not. I think most of those jobs are rushed. I'd certainly be getting a building inspection done there, and I don't think typically they're using the best quality products. I think they're using the products that look the most amount of value, and sometimes I think they're hiding something. So that's where I would lead with. Yourself? What about you, Mary?
Look, it depends. If I knew who was doing the flipping and they were reputable and are qualified mostly and had experience, then I might. But most of the time, absolutely not. Unfortunately, there's inferior products that people are using. There's profit put over per people all the time. For example, joinery, just as an example, it's my love and my passion. In a lot of joinery, there's formaldehyde. So in the MDF. So a lot of people using flat packs, they're not realising what's in the actual materials. And unfortunately, they're using the cheapest that they can find. It looks great for the real estate photos, but then afterwards, everything starts to unravel. So I would not, absolutely not.
About you, Trev? You're in the building industry.
Yep.
I'm sure a few people ask you to do some quotes and do up their properties for sale.
Yeah, it happens. I think if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said definitely not.
Yeah.
I think now, in hindsight, we looked at a property we didn't buy because it had been renovated. Drove past the other day and was like, oh, that block's pretty big. Like, I think it comes down to what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
If for you it works out, if you're going to develop it because it's a massive block, then what does it matter? If you're going to move into it, maybe then you wouldn't, like you said, depending on the quality of it. I think it depends on, for me, I think it depends on what I was going to do with that property.
Yeah. I think too, I've seen, a classic one I've seen is nice coat of render. It always does a good job, apart from the bricks are cracked underneath. Structurally, there could be anywhere from a rebuild from 20 grand to 100 grand, and you don't see that because the property hasn't settled. I'm not anti it, but if you're seeing splashes of paint, and there could be painting up a mould, there's heaps of different things there. I guess, you probably look through for defects and that sort of stuff, Mark. What would you look for?
I look at everything right through the board from the foundations upwards, and look at the finishes. As we heard from Mary, they're really, really, really important. where they use those finishes. I was on a job the other day where they used a type of laminate in the barbecue area outside. How long, Mary, do you think that would last?
Oh God, that would give me a stroke.
So, but in saying that, a lot of people don't know, and there are a lot of people that do know. But I think that it's, you know, if you're in the not know, then you have to engage in somebody that does know. I think that's really important. And if you then find that there are multiple defects, then, you know, get it priced, you know, and then negotiate hard, but don't be attached emotionally to the property.
Yep, and I think too, like, look, if someone, there's nothing wrong with doing a property up for sale. They're completely not against that. It's people that are in the business that are simply just working off spreadsheets and they're just trying to get in and out. They've got 4 weeks to complete the project. It looks like an episode of The Block. They're renovating, they're getting it in, they're smashing this. And probably, I think the main debate there would really be they haven't had time to see if all these things actually work. You need property, they need time to settle. I guess you're looking after buyers and sellers. But if somebody was buying a property, it's been listed, what are some of the things, and would you recommend getting a building inspector in?
We always recommend getting a building inspector in. Every contract standard advice is that you make it subject to a satisfactory building and pest inspection, which means that if the buyer is not satisfied with any part of the building and pest inspection, you can walk away from the transaction, have your deposit returned to you, and therefore the buyer really doesn't bear any costs or penalties. The practical problem is that most estate agents recommend a subject to building and pest inspection, but that particular clause only allows a buyer to terminate the contract if there's a major structural defect or a major pest infestation. Now, often it might not be major, but it might still cost a lot of money to the buyer.
So how do you write it that it's not major?
Yeah, so when we give advice, and if the client takes our advice, we specifically word it to say, subject to satisfactory building and pest inspection.
Yeah.
If the buyer is not satisfied, the buyer may terminate the contract and receive their full deposit. That's my wording.
Yeah.
However, if the vendor sticks to their wording, then what we do recommend is that the client carry out their building and pest inspection either prior to signing the contract or immediately after signing the contract within that 3 business day cooling off period.
Yep.
Because that will allow them to terminate the contract and walk away under cooling off. They will still lose a little bit of money, but it's still not as much as having to rectify everything that might be on.
That's all for this week, and thank you for joining us. If you want to see the full interviews, check out our website, thenewpropertyshow.tv, and we'll see you again next week.